So a lot of you have been asking me to do filming locations for The Fall Guy. And no, I'm not talking about the movie that recently came out, although I'm sure you all saw that, right? Of course, I'm talking about the TV show that was on the air from 1981 until 1986, starring Lee Majors as Colt Seavers, Hollywood stuntman and part-time bounty hunter. And Colt Seavers would travel all around Los Angeles to hunt down these criminals, and that's why it makes it the perfect TV show for us to do filming locations for, because it was filmed all around LA. And we're gonna kick things off by taking a look at the locations for Season 1, Episode 1, the pilot episode, which is really like a movie because it's an hour and a half long. And today we're gonna see how many of these locations we can track down. So, let's go see what we can find. The episode begins with Colt heading to a hospital to look for a crook that skipped out on his bail. And the hospital that they use, at least the establishing shot of the outside of the hospital, was this building right here. And not too much has changed on this building, except for, of course, the trees have gotten a lot bigger and they now block a lot of the building. And after leaving the hospital, Colt drops him off at the police station, and we get a quick establishing shot of the outside of this building, and almost nothing has changed here, except for, of course, the trees have gotten bigger and now somewhat block the building.
That was unbelievable.
While performing a stunt, Colt's cousin Howie shows up out of nowhere and tells him that he's back from school and he's there to manage him, and he wants to learn all about being a stuntman because he thinks there's lots of money to be made. So Colt takes Howie to his house, and I know all of you want to know where this house was located, but I haven't found it. There are some theories online, but I haven't been able to confirm anything. So anyways, Colt takes a seat on his outdoor bathtub and has a little talk with Howie, letting him know that being a stuntman isn't as glamorous as he may think, and there's not a lot of money to be made in it. A little bit later, Colt gets a call from Big Jack letting him know that Country Joe has skipped out on his bail and he has to find him. He tells Howie that he can sleep on the couch and leave in the morning, but Howie insists on going with Colt. When Colt and Howie are on their way to look for Country Joe, we see them driving down the street, and they're really just driving back and forth on this section of Ventura Boulevard in Woodland Hills. We see them pass by a lot of different buildings. Some of them are still here and some of them still look the same. We see them pass by this shopping center, which looks a little bit different, and they then pass by this 7-Eleven, which also has been remodeled. They pass by a bank, which is now out of business, but you can still match it up. Now, probably my favorite thing that they pass by is a flower shop, and then just beyond the flower shop is a sporting goods store. And if you look right here, this is the exact same sporting goods store. Still has the same name. The front of it is a little bit different, but it's the same sporting goods store all these years later. And if you pause this scene in the exact right spot, you can look down the alley between the two businesses and you can see where the wall starts to get higher, and then right next to it looks like a garage. If you look right here down this alley, you can see where the wall gets higher, and then there's that garage. Right here was the flower shop, and then right over here was the sporting goods store. And like I said, same name all these years later. Really cool. Now somehow magically, they go from being on Ventura Boulevard in Woodland Hills to being in Hollywood, and they're driving right here on Carlos Avenue away from Gower. You can see the sign behind them for Gower, but that apartment building is no longer there. But when they get a little bit further down the street, you can see this house on the right side. And so they're driving right here on Carlos Avenue when all of a sudden John Kramer comes out of nowhere and almost hits them because he's all hepped up on booze and pills and who knows what else. They're now all of a sudden one street over on Yucca Street, and John Kramer's laughing it up and having a good time, and he doesn't see the little boy crossing the street on his bicycle, and he hits him right over here. And then of course he takes off because he's a... There's now this newer building that blocks the Capitol Records building, so the view looks a little bit different, but this is the spot. In fact, it was right over here where Colt stops his truck and gets out to check on the little boy. He would have stopped it right here in front of this building, and luckily this one doesn't look much different at all. So they were able to find John Kramer and arrest him, but John Kramer's got a lot of money. So even though he hit a kid and fled the scene, John Kramer's able to get out on bail. Isn't that nice? So after all of that drama, Colt and Howie finally make it over to the Palamino, where they assume they're gonna find Country Joe. And this building right here, this used to be the Palamino. Unfortunately, it closed down many years ago, and it's now a banquet hall. But you can head over to the Valley Relics Museum to see the original sign. You even get to see it lit up just like it was on the building. And when they show the front of the building, on the other side of the driveway, you can see a liquor store. And if you look right over there, that liquor store is still here, and that's the same sign that you see in the episode. It's just that back in the 80s, the sign just said liquor, and now it says Harp's Liquor. So possibly a different owner, a different liquor store, but still a liquor store. Also in that shot, you can see that just to the left of the door is the ticket window. And you can see right here is where they covered up that ticket window. You can see where it used to be, and then just to the left of the ticket window, you can see another doorway. And if you look right over here, you can see where they covered up that doorway as well. So Colt and Howie head inside the Palamino, and they only show the main showroom for a couple of seconds. And it's been a long time since I've seen a show there, but this is exactly how I remember it looking. Now Colt was able to find Country Joe backstage, but he's got some new associates that aren't too friendly. He ends up getting into a fight with them, which spreads to the club, and a huge brawl breaks out. Colt goes running outside to look for Country Joe as he sees him speeding away, and they're now in a completely different spot. They started out in the parking lot of the Palamino, but this now looks like it's the back lot of a movie studio. If you look at those buildings, and you can see right here that Colt's actually in a parking lot, not on a street. And again, if you look at the buildings, they just remind me of buildings that you would find on a back lot. So I'm pretty sure that this was filmed on the Fox lot on a section of the lot that no longer exists. We see Howie dropping Country Joe off at the police station so he can turn himself in, and this building is definitely on the Fox lot, and it still exists. This building was also used in the movie Johnny Dangerously, and that's how I found it. Notice that path right there? That's where Country Joe gets out of the car, and he then walks up that path to use the payphone. So after John Kramer gets released on bail, we get an establishing shot of the place where he's staying, and he was staying right here at the Beverly Hills Hotel. The first shot we get of the Beverly Hills Hotel is when Big Jack calls John Kramer to let him know that things have changed because the boy that he hit passed away. We then get a second establishing shot of the Beverly Hills Hotel, similar to this one, when Big Jack goes over to the hotel to look for John Kramer, but of course when she gets to his room, she finds that he's left town. There's a very quick establishing shot of the bail bonds place, which would have been located right about here, and his truck would have been parked right over here in front of this building. Now it looks a lot different because This is Irwin Street, and this used to cut all the way through, but this now is closed off. The street ends right over there, and now this is only open to pedestrians. But back in the day, Irwin Street went all the way through, and that's why you can see there were meters all along here. But you can definitely recognize this building. It even still has, you can't see it now because of all of the shrubbery right there, but there's some big planters in front of the building, and you can clearly see those in the episode, and they're still there now. Like I said, nothing has changed on this building, just the street is gone and the bail bonds place is no longer here. It was replaced with a brand new building. This is the newer Van Nuys Courthouse building.
Colt and Howie go in to see Samantha Jack, and she explains to them the situation with John Kramer. And so they take off to look for him in a small town in Arizona.
But when Colt and Howie arrive in Arizona, they were actually right here in Lancaster, California, with a few shots in nearby Palmdale, but most of it was filmed right here on Lancaster Boulevard. Looks a little bit different. Things have been modernized, but there's still a couple of spots that we can match up.
When they first get to town, they come to a stop at the intersection of Lancaster Boulevard and Cedar Avenue, and there's quite a few businesses that can be seen. But as you can see here, that intersection looks nothing like it did back in the 80s. On the left side of the street, you can see a sign for Save on Drugs, and that building is no longer visible because of all of the trees going down the middle of the street. It's now a beauty supply store, but back in the day, this was a Save-Ons.
So Colt decides to get out and take a walk around town, and he parks his truck right here. Across the street behind him, you can see a Security Pacific Bank. It's now a Starbucks. It would have been right over there on the corner. And the buildings that he parks his truck in front of, you can see a stone wall, which would have been this wall right here with the mural on it. You'll notice the top of the building still looks the same. You can also see this building next door, which also still looks the same.
They end up going to a local restaurant to grab some lunch, but when they ask around if anyone knows John Kramer, people aren't too friendly when they hear that name. After leaving the restaurant, they're walking down the sidewalk in the same area where they parked the truck when they come across a couple of locals.
So Colt and Howie are walking down the sidewalk right here, and they come across the owner of this business. The owner was standing right here in this very spot, and they walk up to him and they ask him if he happens to know Big John Kramer. And just like with what happened at the restaurant, he does not treat them with very much kindness. He actually walks into his business, locks the door, and flips over the open sign to now read closed. So after he closes and locks the door on him, they're standing here trying to figure out what to do next, and they see the woman that just passed him. She's getting into her car right over here, so they decide to walk over to her and see if maybe she's heard of John Kramer, and that doesn't go very well either. She ends up running over Howie's foot as she speeds away. So they continue walking down the street, and they see another lady walking down the sidewalk and decide to ask her if she knows John Kramer. I mean, they're really not learning their lesson, are they? Of course, it does not go very well, and she has a lot of unkind things to say to them. And as she starts to cross the street at Lancaster Boulevard and Fern Avenue, you can actually see the sign for Fern Avenue behind them while they're talking to her. As she's crossing the street, a truck comes out of nowhere and it's going to hit her. So Howie runs out into the street and knocks her out of the way. Of course, instead of thanking Howie, instead she tells him to get his hands off of her, and she ends up getting into the truck that almost hit her. And the truck drives off with the lady shouting a bunch of mean things at Howie and Colt because she thinks that they're friends of John Kramer. So Colt decides to head over to the sheriff's station to see if maybe they can tell him where he could find John Kramer. And the building that was used for the sheriff's station is this one right behind me. This is just a couple miles down the road in Palmdale, California, and this is Palmdale City Hall.
After finding out that John Kramer is the crooked sheriff of the town, they trick him by taking him out to dinner and telling him that they're big-time movie scouts and they want to use his town for a big Hollywood picture. And everything's going great until Country Joe shows up. And now Colt's got a whole nother set of problems on his hands.
So they take Country Joe to the Hunter Hotel to hide him out. Now, the Hunter Hotel used to be located right over there.
As you can see, it's no longer there. But what's funny is they take him to the Hunter Hotel to hide him out, but it was located pretty much right across the street from the sheriff's station. This is the building that was used for the sheriff's station, and the Hunter Hotel was right there, so not a very good hideout. Now, if you come around to the back side of the building, you'll find the spot where Colt sneaks into the sheriff's station. This is in the same location, but on the back side and a little bit over on the other side of the property. Right here is where Colt is peeking around the corner. And then right over here, this is where Colt climbs up the side of the wall.
The next day, we see all of the police cars showing up at the sheriff's station because Colt told them that they have to pass a test in order for them to use their town in the movie. Now, when the helicopter's landing at the sheriff's station, you can see the Hunter Hotel at the end of the street. You can also see it when Howie's pulling away from the sheriff's station. The truck would have been parked right about here. Howie gets in the truck and he pulls away, and you can see the Hunter Hotel at the end of the street. The truck would have pulled away from the curb right here, and then right at the end of the street would have been the Hunter Hotel. Colt's now speeding through town with all of the police cars chasing him, and as they turn onto Lancaster Boulevard from Cedar Avenue, you can see the old post office building. Everything around it has changed, but the old post office still looks the same. So they're speeding down Lancaster Boulevard, but the chase then goes from being in town to being in the middle of the desert. And the remainder of the chase is in the middle of the desert. Oh yeah, Colt manages to get into the helicopter that John Kramer's in, and he's now flying him back to Los Angeles and taking him to jail. But first he has to do something about the car that's chasing Howie that has the 3 bad guys in it that are after Country Joe. He manages to hook up to the bumper of the car during a high-speed chase, very impressive. He then flies the car all the way to Utah and sets it on top of a giant rock in the middle of Lake Powell. Now you gotta remember, there's no CGI here. They actually had to fly that car up on top of that giant rock. Pretty crazy.
Well, that's going to do it for our first look at Fall Guy filming locations. But don't worry, there's only 112 more episodes that we could take a look at. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.